Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right. Everything is synced up. Joe, Matt, thanks for coming on Flight Path. I'm really excited to get to talk to you guys. I think we've been planning this for a little while, and this is exciting to have you guys.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Really happy to be here.
Yeah. So from all the way from snowy Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So when was the last time you guys saw the sun?
It's been a little overcast.
Yeah, I think we had one sunny day like 10 days ago, but that's about it. We've had a lot of rain and overcast.
I'm assuming that the office kind of shut down on that day, and everybody's like, I'm going to cut out about 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it was a day to go flying, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding.
You got to take those when they come.
It's like the Surf's Update, right? I
Yeah.
remember reading about I think it's Quicksilver or something like that. That was like, if the weather was good, they'd call Surf's Update, and everybody just go out and surf. Everybody cancel work. It was like you got one per day, one per year. All the employees had to all unanimously agree that it was a Surf's Up day, and they'd all just take out. So, yeah. So, Joe, I want to dive in really quick and just get some background. Would love to hear kind of where you came from, how you got here. What is it about aviation that got you interested?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been involved in a few different businesses. Aviation is the most recent. Interestingly enough, these days I'm so immersed in the aviation world. I'm around aviation people all the time, and I meet so many people that grew up in aviation. Their dad was a pilot, or their mom was a flight attendant, or whatever. They were immersed in it. I never had that experience. I actually had no idea that I wanted to be in aviation when I was a kid, but I was involved with.
What'd you want to be when you grew up?
I think I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew that that's what I wanted to do, but I was involved in a commercial real estate business in Milwaukee prior to Jet Out, and aviation became a core competency of that business, and I just absolutely fell in love with aviation and got my pilot certificate and all that good stuff. So, for me, it's interesting. Business came first, and then aviation came second. But I love aviation. I've fallen in love with it.
So y'all were using aviation as a tool in your business, and somehow did it fall in your lap? Was it did you become de facto head of flight department? What was your kind of how did that happen internally?
Yeah. So my partners in that business, we got that business going in 2011, and it was we were coming out of the Great Recession, and asset values were very low.
There were deals to be had. It's tough to get a deal today. I think they might be on their way back, but we'll see.
Yeah, you never know. But they definitely were there then. So we were looking at the industrial commercial real estate market, and especially what we call tertiary markets. Really small towns
Like Chattanooga.
Yeah,
well, actually outside of Chattanooga,
even
maybe.
smaller. Yeah,
Really?
like Newton, Iowa.
Ooh,
Have you ever heard of Newton,
I've
Iowa?
never heard of Newton, Iowa ever.
Yeah, well, Newton, Iowa has an airport
No way.
with a racetrack on it.
No way.
Really cool airport.
So wait, do you land in the middle of like the racetrack?
Right next to it.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
It's a really cool airport. And we, through Phoenix Investors, the commercial real estate business that I was involved in before Jet Out, we bought the former Whirlpool facility that's in Newton, Iowa. So that's just like one of the deals we did. But basically, we were buying these assets and massive former single tenant manufacturing facilities, repositioning them usually for logistics uses. But they're spread out all across the country in these small towns. And, we just realized that logistically, we had a problem of getting our employees to these properties.
How good is the commercial service into Newton, Iowa?
I think
almost non-existent. We acquired a business in Fort Dodge, Iowa. So I would imagine that it's quite similar. I think there was 2 United flights, and it was Essential Air Service, and you had to get to Chicago. It was 2 flights a day. We took one of the flights out after we went up there and met the team, and I could see the door when I was basically starting security. Like it was the security line was about as far away as we are,
Mhm.
and then the door was like where that TV is. I mean, it was like right there. And me and our CEO were on the flight, and one other person on a on a CRJ 200. And I was like, all right, well, not a whole lot of air service, which makes it tough to do business, because then you got to go to Chicago, then from Chicago to Milwaukee. It's a whole day to get there, a whole day to get back.
And the operators start taking the EAS money or not exactly knowing to be the most reliable operators either, unfortunately. So it's we were there. That's where we were at. Our employees were doing that, and they were getting stuck both ways. And what was a 1-day trip through our corporate flight department that we created for Phoenix investors was a 3 or 4-day trip on the airlines, and it wasn't economical for us.
So what was the corporate flight department is kind of what started the whole journey. What was the first airplane that the corporate flight department owned?
This is a funny story. Cirrus SR-22. It was a bright yellow SR-22.
Oh, is it like that electric yellow color?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm familiar.
Naturally aspirated. It was a great airplane for us.
Did you fly it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Awesome. We put 1,000 hours on it in the first year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hours.
Seriously, I'm not exaggerating. Truly 1,000 hours. And we sold it almost exactly 1 year after we took delivery of it. And we actually got a great, execution on the resale. It was a great airplane, but we outgrew the performance of the airplane quickly.
So Matt, you're maybe the resident airplane guy, if you will. You've been around the industry for a little bit.
Yeah.
Walk us through how'd you end up at Jet Out? I mean, you were a part of what I would dub the Textron Mafia. I don't know if you're familiar with the PayPal Mafia concept, but it feels as though there was this group of people. It's about 20, 25 different people that all worked at Textron at the same time, and they all kind of are now out and are leading, top level executives at different companies. So
yes.
walk us through your background.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I graduated college.
Where'd you go?
I went to Pitt.
Very cool.
And graduated, had an electrical engineering degree. Went to Wichita, Kansas. I always liked aviation. Had gone to the Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics, which is like the offshoot of Pitt there. Had a focus on electrical and avionics engineering. Moved to Wichita, Kansas. It was close to Colorado. I wanted to ski and snowboard on the weekends. No one ever told me that half of Colorado was flatter than Kansas. But it got me.
And they also probably didn't tell you about how much exciting stuff there is to do in Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah. I figured I'd go for a year and give it a try, but it was a cool job. I got to go to Wichita, and I actually worked in experimental for 3 years, built prototype airplanes.
So walk us through some of the ones that you built. Did Cessna ever think about coming out with like a kit build?
I was always on the business jet product line. So I got to build the first XLS airplane. I got to build and do a lot of the testing on the CJ1 Plus, 2 Plus, CJ3s, the Mustang.
Denali?
Did not. That was later in my career. But yeah, I got to do a lot of fun products. After about 3 years of experimental, I was sitting at a desk, and I said, well, if I'm going to sit at a desk in here, I'm going to go design airplanes. So I moved into the design engineering side of the company and supported mostly the CJ product line up through the CJ3s. The CJ4 came along in 2008, 2009, and took over the testing and flight testing side for the avionics and electrical for that program, and loved it. It was a lot of fun. And then in about 2011, on a walk with a couple of colleagues, we had heard through the grapevine that Garmin was interested in developing a new platform that ultimately became the G3000. And so we hatched a plan one day on a walk to see if we could figure out how to put a G3000 into a CJ airplane. And so the M2 and the 3 Plus came out of that. I got to do a lot of the leadership on those programs. It was a ton of fun. It was a close-knit group. We all sat in one room, and they threw pizzas under the door and just said, work as many hours as you can. And we got to actually build the prototypes as part of the engineers. So we would work in the mornings, early in the mornings. We would building the airplane, the prototype, putting the wire bundles together, putting it in the airplane. Then we would go design for about 6 to 8 hours during the day. And then we would go back at night down to the shop, and we would work till late at night, working on kind of putting the airplane together and getting it to flight test and doing all the certification. So that was great. That led me into program management with Textron, and then ultimately business development and a few other roles. And then my last stop in Wichita was overseeing all the marketing for the business jet line, so all the citations. There was a period I did have the turboprops as well. So that's where King Airs and Denali's kind of fell underneath my marketing group as well. Did that until 2018. And at that point, I had enough of living in Kansas. I had spent my 16 years, which was 15 years longer than I had planned. So I took a role and an opportunity to move to the north central part of the U.S., move into a sales role with the company. I decided at that point I was not going to live in Illinois. And so I ended up in Milwaukee. So I moved the family up there in 2018 and did sales in the north central part of the U.S. and Canada for a number of years. Met Joe, trying to sell him M2s.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, you probably were trying to sell him airplanes.
Yeah, I was.
And then he said, hey, you're pretty good at sales.
Well, he actually said, you know what? I think we like the TBM product better. We're going to go buy from the French. And so, so we he went off and did that. And then back in like 2021, we reconnected, and he said, I've got this thing I'm doing. We're doing this co-ownership program called Jet Out. It's growing, but we don't even have a website. We don't have a sales team. He goes, what do you think about coming to join me and giving this a try? And so after enough nights of talking late at night and dinners and lunches, I finally agreed to come on board. So it's been 3 years. It's been a lot of fun since then. And we now have a website.
Yeah, you do have a website. That's quite the journey. So how do you go from being an avionics designer, test engineer, like that into sales? I mean, it doesn't seem like I get
that question a lot. At some point, when the typical engineers turn in a direction with their career, I turned the other way, and it really came back to when we were doing the M2 program. Part of my role in that program was leading a customer advisory board, and I had a group of current Citation owners. Many of them were Mustang owner pilots and a few other models.
And they all said, we want a bathroom, right?
Well, they wanted a lot. They wanted it to go a long ways, go really fast, and cost, a little bit of money.
And you said, here, let me introduce you to the CJ3.
Yeah. So, but what that led me to, I found this passion with listening to the customers, understanding what the customer's needs are, and then designing a product that fit that need. And so where previously a lot of times airplanes are more designed in a vacuum with the engineering team, we were the opposite. We were completely open to this group. Every other Friday, I would host a web conference. I can't remember what we called them. It was before Zoom days, where we would get on and we'd say, here's the new pedestal that we've designed. What do you guys think? And, they would give us their different feedback, and when somebody would say, well, my phone I don't have a place to put my phone. Can you come up with a place to put my phone? So then we would design a little tray that goes forward to the throttles and literally measured the guy's phone and said, here, this will work with a phone nowadays. And so we just did that over and over until that product was designed. But that led me to this kind of a different direction for my career, where it was much more customer focused as opposed to engineering.
Yeah, you were less about reading the books and writing the books and more about meeting the actual people who are flying the airplanes, which is totally different. So you touched on the TBM days. So I think the audience might like to know, you were M2. So you go from SR22 in the corporate flight department. What'd you move into next?
TBMs.
So you moved into the TBM. Okay, what was your first TBM? If you remember.
It was a TBM A50.
Okay.
90 Papa X-ray. It's still flying around today with the same paint scheme. We painted it and a sister ship, 91 Papa X-ray, a crazy orange.
I'm starting to sense a theme here. So you've got electric yellow, you've got a crazy orange.
We got a little crazy with the paint in the early days. Not anymore, but back then we had a lot of fun with the paint. And actually both those two airplanes are still flying around. One of them is actually being used by a YouTuber pilot right now to fly around the world.
Oh, very
91 Pop X-ray. Somehow, the airplane just, ended up with him, and he's recording some videos on it right now. So great airplanes. TBM is a fantastic airplane, very dependable airplane. It's not a conventional choice for a corporate flight department, but it's fast. We have found it to be a very reliable and dependable workhorse aircraft.
What was your average passenger count? Was it 1 or 2 passengers? That's why you went TBM?
Yes. Yeah. Up to 3 pretty much. I mean, every once in a while we would squeeze 4 in there, but that,
it's a little tight.
Kind of crazy.
I'll tell you, as someone who flew from Chattanooga to Boise, Idaho in a TBM with 4 in the back, it's tight.
Yeah, it gets tight.
You're
really going to get to know the other passengers.
Yeah, and I'm 5'10". I'm not very tall. 2 of the guys that we were with were 6'4", 6'5", and they sat there the entire time like this. And by the time we got out, they're like, everything's cracking. They're standing up. Yeah. That's a tight. So, corporate flight department, TBMs. Was this I think that the question that I had when I was first, obviously reading kind of your story and understanding kind of how you got here, did it start out as a, hey, I know you in town, I'll sell you part of my plane, and you can fly, if you fly 91, you'd be a part owner. Did it start like that, or was it more tactical? How was kind of the early days of Jet Out? How did that start? How'd that conversation come about?
So, the deal that I had with the partners in the Phoenix investor business was always that I would, basically come on to Phoenix Investors and help run things for 3 years or so. And I ended up giving them closer to 7. Time flies when you're having fun.
I'm hearing a recurring theme.
Yeah, we're not
going to stay there for 1 year, and then I was there for 16. I was going to stay for 3 years, so there for 7.
Yeah, exactly. But I always wanted to go start another business because that's what I love doing. I love building businesses, and it just became obvious to me from creating, building the corporate flight department for Phoenix Investors and seeing the amazing things that did for that business. I and my partners in that business firmly believe that it would have been impossible, full stop impossible, to build that business without business aviation. And I think that's a really cool story because today it's an 80 million square foot national commercial real estate business that was started in 2011.
Yeah, and still primarily industrial.
Yeah, it's almost all industrial, pretty much. That's a wild story. It was done with business aviation. It would have been impossible to do it without it. And I think that's a really cool story. I guess eventually it just clicked for me that this was going to be the next business. But it actually wasn't. It didn't start that way. It wasn't like that sort of casual sort of
It wasn't like just a natural kind of oh, okay, well, I guess we'll start selling shares into the corporate flight department or whatever.
Yeah, no, I had before I decided to get into aviation as a business, I really studied the history of the industry, and I talked to a lot of people, my mentors, people that I trust, and most of them said, "You're crazy."
It is really hard to make money in the aviation business. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Yeah. Especially doing something like fractional or across the board. It's just it's an expensive activity, high risk, relatively volatile. Yeah, I, they were crazy, but it sounds like, so far so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I wanted to make sure that, whatever we were going to build was going to be sustainable, from the very beginning. So, I kind of had a master plan in mind from day one. Now, I'm not going to say that, the master plan is exactly what the business looks like today. You have to be tactical about certain things, and you got to be ready to pivot. But going in, I sort of knew where I wanted to end up, and so I actually bought Part 135 air carrier before we did anything. That was the very, very first thing that we did. About a company called Lakeshore Aviation, which was
any aircraft on the certificate when you bought it?
Yeah, there was one piston single
Nice.
on the on the certificate. It was a single pilot in command.
Nice.
AOC.
You're like, all right, everybody, we're gonna start marketing our Bonanza charter. Check it out.
No. Yeah, it's funny. I think I can probably say this. I had a meeting at Milwaukee FISDO in the early days of the business in 2018. And may have even actually been 2017, because it was very, very early when we were, sort of assessing the feasibility of the business plan, and met with a representative of Milwaukee FISDO, and we expressed our intent to apply for a Part 135 air carrier certificate. And the gentleman that we were meeting with said, Joe, if you had a manila envelope with a completed application, a PASI, all your manuals, everything, ready to go right now, and you slid it across the table to me, I would be unable to even open this envelope for 6 months. Then it would take me at least 6 months to obtain the resources to actually begin working on, that application. So a year. And then, they suggested that it might make more sense to acquire an existing air carrier that, was held by Milwaukee FISDO. So that's the reason we went that direction.
So to dive in there, because the audience for this show is business operators and probably acquiring a 135, they've either done it or they may be thinking about doing it. How do you value a Part 135 operator? Is it revenue basis? Is it asset basis? Is it, I'll give you $3,000 for your certificate? Like, how do you go about kind of valuing a Part 135? Obviously, it has a value to you. Are you giving them current valuation? Or are you giving them, all right, my opportunity cost is X, so that's what I'm willing to pay? Like, how do you think through that?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. Not an easy question to answer, but I think there's two ways to do it, right? I mean, there's like two traditional valuation methods for any business, right? I mean, there's obviously EBITDA multiple, but if there is
I would imagine a single engine piston air carrier doesn't
not much in terms of the EBITDA.
Not totally sure if EBITDA is even measured.
So then of course there's replacement value, I guess. What would it cost us to wait a year, to even get resources assigned by Milwaukee FISDO, but we have to hire management personnel that are qualified to hold those positions on a Part 135 certificate for that entire time, and make an investment that's very uncertain in terms of timeline. Try to estimate that. That's definitely more art than science, right? There's not, an easy way to.
You don't have a financial model that spits out you should pay this much.
I did do a discounted cash flow analysis on it. I mean, I'm a nerd. I'm showing you what a nerd I am, right?
Yeah, no. I look. If you're not doing a DCF model on it, then you should probably not buy something. Maybe not necessarily, but So did you buy on discounted free cash flows, or did you come with that number and the operator said?
Well, in this case, the operator told us, what made sense for them, and we kind of validated it. That process.
Was it more or less than you were originally willing to pay?
It was pretty close. Yeah, it was pretty close to what we thought was fair, actually. The issue is, the interesting thing is that, you buy the AOC, in this case, this was a single pilot in command certificate, so very minimal capabilities. Obviously, never had jet proving runs or anything like that. So we had to calculate into it the cost of doing all that, which is basically like that's
It's
almost,
the whole thing.
I mean, we're
basically.
saving a year basically, but it actually ended up taking
The
us.
net present value of money equals 1 year, whatever that 1 year
Yeah,
is.
pretty much. That's the value of the certificate, pretty much. That's a pretty good way to look at it, actually. But it took us 3 years to
Wow.
accomplish all of our certification objectives
Wow.
that we had, like from the outset.
So do you put the TBM on there first and then kind of grow from there?
Exactly.
Got it.
That's exactly how we went about it. And then eventually put CJ4 on there, did jet proving runs, all that good stuff. Got all the op specs we needed. It's a process.
How glad was your team when you got the CJ4 and they could actually like go to the bathroom and like reach across the aisle as opposed to like sitting there next to each other?
Very happy.
Yeah.
It's been a great airplane for our operation, and we love the 525 type. It's just a phenomenal.
The best part, in my opinion, when I have clients come to me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying something," they'll be thinking Bravo, or they might be thinking, something older, or they might be going something small, and they're asking me my opinion, which is worth about what they pay me for, which is free, but is that the 525 type certificate is so flexible. And so that means that your pool of pilots is so much larger than if you were to go buy even something in the Embraer airline, where it's not nearly you don't have nearly the flexibility of, CJ3, CJ4, you can kind of move up and down. That's what makes it, in my opinion, unique.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So you get all the way through 135 certificate, you go convince Matt to join. At what point do you decide, okay, maybe you sold a few fractions, or maybe you sold, like, did you start out fractional? It was, hey, we're doing fractional all the way. Or did you start out saying membership card or what, charter only? What was did you ever pivot, or was it always we're doing fractional from day one?
So so first of all, technically we're not fractional legally speaking.
Interesting. Okay.
We're fractional like, but of course, the FAA has been very clear about what it views as fractional, which is, an interchange of dry leases. And their position is that any interchange of dry leases needs to be regulated under Part 91, Subpart K. So we're not 91K. We're Part 135. And, so a good question, for that, honestly, we asked ourselves at the time was, do we get a 91K? Do we do 135? And the way we looked at it is, man, I mean, the effort is almost the same. Basically, 91K is 135 light. So if we're going to put all the certification effort in now at this point in the business, it just makes sense to go all the way to 135 and just operate everything under 135.
So you are selling fractions of the airplane, but when you fly on not your tail, you fly 135?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and we actually strongly encourage our customers to operate all flights, or to request us to operate all of their flights, including on their own serial number aircraft, under our Part 135 certificate. All of the aircraft in our program are conformed to our certificate, and we just feel that there's a safety benefit, to doing everything the same way every time. So that's worked really well for us. It's given us a lot of flexibility. What the customer is buying is actually legally a co-ownership interest. Sort of like you would, hear about people doing, tenant and common aircraft co-ownership, usually in halves or quarters, and then there's like an aircraft manager or something like that. But the difference is that our operating model is very, very different than what you would typically see in co-ownership or joint ownership situations.
So you're essentially, as opposed to the comparison is not NetJets or FlexJet or AirShare or something like that. It's a bit of a different comparison because you're operating a little bit differently.
Absolutely. So we're very much in the middle. We're in between, I guess, local aircraft management and national floating fleet charter or fractional.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And it's, a unique, different way to go in. How do your customers feel about paying federal excise tax?
So there was a great tax court ruling that was very favorable, to our business a few years ago. Basically, what the court.
Thank you, MBAA, by the way.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah. 100%. Look, we're big. We're big champions of MBA. We love MBA and what they do for our industry. It's fantastic. And you're right. MBA was very involved in that issue, and then eventually in actually getting legislation passed to actually truly put the issue to bed once and for all. But basically, it's really simple now, whereas it was extremely complicated. There was the PCC test previously. That was, you need a law degree to figure it out. Now it's easy. We all we have to do is just explain to our customers, if you're on your aircraft that you own, your serial number, there is no FET. And if you're on another aircraft in the fleet, of course there's FETs. But the interesting thing is, look, in a fractional program, a 91K, there is a fractional fuel tax surcharge that I think people don't even think about. And when you compare the two, when you compare the fractional surcharge to the FET that you might occasionally have to, pay just because your plane isn't available and you're going to be, put onto a different airplane in our program, it almost is a wash. We think that having the flexibility of operating under Part 135 and the liability transfer that occurs, it's net positive.
So talk to me about insurance. Matt, this might be a good question for you since you're in the operations role.
Yeah.
Talk to me about 130. You're operating 135 certificate, and you're carrying the insurance. I'm assuming you're not pushing that on to the owners.
Correct.
Is the cost higher, lower? Like, how do you think about insurance cost, and then maybe some of the other kind of ancillary legal costs and stuff like that?
Yeah, we made a decision really early on that we were going to carry high liability coverage on our aircraft. That kind of sets us apart from a lot of our competitors. So like for the CJ4 as an example, we carry a $200 million policy in the back of that airplane.
A lot.
But that does require us.
High limit.
Yeah, it requires us to do things on the operations side that are a little bit unique. We have to have 2 pilots up front all the time. Even on the TBMs, we crewed those airplanes. So we always have 2 pilots in the airplane, and those pilots have to be highly trained. They have to be going to an approved flight school that's actually doing simulator training in that type of airplane. Even though we're flying the 525, our insurance requires us to put them through a CJ4 specific school so that they've been trained on that airplane and that airframe and now that specific configuration. And then our pilots have to have, a high degree of experience. So we're not able to, I think what the limits or the minimums to fly charter is like 250 hours. Our pilots are, to be even in the right seat, are around 1,500 hours.
Wow. Okay. So it's like almost airline transport. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
In fact, we put all of our pilots, even the right seaters, go through an ATP school. So they get their ATP ratings. We don't do SIC ratings. Everybody gets a 525 rating in our program. So all of our pilots are highly trained. They've gone to the greatest schools that we can put them through. They've got ATPs and 525 ratings. So
yeah,
which is
different.
What allows us to have that $200 million coverage.
Yeah, no kidding. And them not charge you so much that it's cost prohibitive to your clients.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a bit of a touchy subject that we've talked about offline, but I wanted to kind of get it on the record. First of all, your name is very similar to Jedit. And I know that you guys don't love the comparison. I know that there's been some articles that there has been a comparison between the two. Jedit came and said, look, we're going to have a really low cost per hour. It's going to be very light jet, Honda jet, and we're going to blitz scale, grow really fast. I think it might be a bit. You guys might be unlucky in that you guys started first and your names sound so similar. I think that might be a little bit of a disadvantage. But I want to talk about dive even a little bit deeper into the business operations. We've talked about 135 versus 91K, which makes a big difference. Let's talk about business operationally. Not being a floating fleet gives you, although your customers may pay reposition, which no one likes to know they're paying for repositioning, but they always pay for it, whether they like it or not. Somebody's paying for it. But let's talk about business operationally, like how you guys are differentiated from, we'll call it Jetit because, they're no longer around and they have a similar name and flew light. You guys fly light jets. They flew very light jets, but maybe there's some comparison. So operationally, what makes you guys different?
Yeah. So our operating model in terms of how we actually handle our flight operations is so fundamentally different than any floating fleet operator. We're really more similar to a local aircraft manager, corporate flight department, a JetLinks style joint ownership type structure. In our minds, we really see more fundamental comparisons between those types of business models than between jet out and a floating fleet operator. Our airplanes, they live in one place. Each airplane is actually assigned to a permanent physical base. Typically, the airplanes return to base almost every single day. And we've created very robust financial incentives that don't mandate return to base, but create strong financial incentives for our customers to want to return their airplane to base. And that has worked really well for us. That has allowed us to
walk us through some of those mechanics. Just I don't want to pass that up because I think that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Financially incentivizing your customers and saying, look, it's going to be expensive for you to keep the airplane with you. So what are some of those mechanics without giving up too much of the secret sauce? But if you want to give up all your secret sauce, I think aviation is such an execution game. I think you could genuinely spill down to the penny how much money you're making and costing. And I think that there's 1,000 people that could try and 900 of them would fail. So what are some of those mechanics that you build in to financially incentivize your customers to return the airplane home?
Yeah, so it's about negative and positive reinforcement. So of course, there has to be a negative mechanism in the sense that, we are a day-based fractional-like program, and we have to have a way of allocating use. Of course, NetJets, started out with, a 50-hour per 16th model. And then a number of other operators introduced day-based models. And we adopted the day-based model because we felt that it was by far the most efficient way of allocating effectively the value of the capital that's been invested into the airplane to each owner and allowing them to use that most effectively. But if you have a certain number of days throughout the year and you can fly as much as you want in each day, that right there actually incentivizes good cooperation between the owners. So I'll give you an example, a practical example of how that happens. So traditionally in co-ownership, especially like half and half co-ownership, you hear stories about how friends aren't friends anymore after they own an airplane.
Like I tell people, it's like sharing an airplane can be like marriage. You should decide whether you really want to live with the person before you move in. Like it can go very, very poor to co-own an airplane.
Exactly. Yeah. Because, if you think about it, you're kind of on your own, right? There are actually great companies, like Partners in Aviation that put some, structure around it. But, look, you're still in that with one other person.
Yeah.
And,
it's a divorced parent sharing the kids.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's just, you're not, it's not a program, right? It's a partnership, and partnerships can go wrong. But some of the ways that we have seen structures like that go wrong is, one partner in the aircraft will want to take the airplane to the islands for 2 weeks, doesn't want to fly it back. because that's expensive. It's not on a charter certificate. There's really no way to, efficiently do that. And that's really disruptive for the other partner, and, gives the other partner pause as to why they have millions of dollars parked in an aircraft that they can't use. So we knew from the beginning that we had to fix that to make our model work. We had to fix schedule availability. So days fixes part of that problem, because if you have 20 days per year per 16th, which is what we allocate, you're probably not going to take the airplane for 2 weeks to the islands and burn up almost all of your days. So that is a negative incentive, but it's effective. Now, for us, the big breakthrough was really figuring out empty leg resale. So this was a very difficult thing to do. And I would go so far as to say that this is one of our core competencies. It's very difficult to wrangle empty leg resale. It takes time, it takes effort to figure this out. You have to build a team, you have to build an operation around it. And, we made the investment into this because we knew that it was critical for our business model, because, okay, you have the negative reinforcement with the days. You need a positive reinforcement too, to really get, everyone rowing in the same direction in terms of your clients, and in a way that they're happy to do it. So for us, the positive reinforcement was that empty leg resale program. And basically what that is to the extent that we have a client that has a one-way, maybe Milwaukee to Naples, Florida, or something like that. They want to be dropped off because, they're going to their vacation house for 2 weeks or something like that. We've already explained why, it's probably not economical for them to keep the airplane for 2 weeks. Still, though, you got to return the airplane to base, and we do charge our DOCs on that return leg by default. So how do we help the customer ameliorate the blow of that empty leg repositioning? We sell it on our charter certificate, and we become very efficient at doing so. And the net result is incredible. So, from our perspective, we're not taking undue risk in terms of providing guarantees. From the customer perspective, they're getting incredible pricing because they're basically paying direct operating costs that are the same as any owner of a whole aircraft. And they're leveraging the charter market to, maybe even make some money, or at least share costs with another co-owner on that empty leg, so that they don't have additional empty leg costs.
So you're public marketing, so you're basically you're also incentivizing your customers to book further in advance, because now you've got 3 weeks to sell the empty leg as opposed to 3 days, which is totally different. And then so like, I own the airplane, I fly to Naples, I need to fly back to Milwaukee. You're going to charge, I don't know, call it a 50% margin, 75% margin, 100% margin, whatever, the market's going to take. Are y'all taking 20% or some chunk thereof, for jet outs, like expenses? Am I the owner? Like, am I covering my costs? 'Cause at that point, they'd probably be happy. Like, what does that actual, like, mechanism look like?
So we started with the trial program in which we were essentially sharing 75% of the profit back to the owner of the day that the empty leg was operated within. So whoever owns that day, they're the ones who are going to get 75% of the profit of that empty leg resale. Now, we've just recently announced a new program that we're going to be moving to soon, in which we will actually be providing firm quotes, bids, essentially, for the empty leg in advance. We're doing that with the benefit of accumulating a lot of operational experience and data relating to the resale of empty legs, and then also some very large data sets that we've licensed, and some machine learning technology that is proprietary that we've developed. And basically, the way it works is pretty simple. A co-owner comes to us, says, I want to fly to Florida. That generates an empty leg. We look at that and how much time flexibility they have, what day of the year it is, what, what direction of flights, what's the routes, all those things. That goes into this black box software, and it spits out essentially the demand, the aggregate demand from the historical data, and that allows us to price that inventory in advance. So
you'll give them basically your empty leg is worth $12,000 or whatever. Like
yeah, we'll give them a net price
14,000
basically.
yeah.
Yeah. And what we've been advertising is that essentially co-owners can expect to recover up to 80% of the cost of those empty legs, based on our longstanding experience with the empty leg resale program.
I wrote a newsletter that I compared empty legs to Bigfoot. You probably have a lot of friends that have said that they've seen one, but you probably have never seen one yourself that works for you, because empty legs tend to go. There was an empty leg that was coming out of Chattanooga. Being in the industry, I always like to keep up with my town. And there's an empty leg going from Chattanooga to some nowhere town, like way north of West Palm Beach. And I was like, that's the thing with empty legs. If you're going to West Palm Beach, you're still getting in an Uber for 2 hours, and then you're taking an airliner back. But everybody's always asking, all right, how do I get a good deal on an empty leg? And it's like, well, 50% of the empty legs that are marketed as empty legs are live flights that some broker is putting out there. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is it has to be on the day that you're trying to go, and it has to be flying overhead and make economical sense to land and pick you up. Like that's it. Empty leg is a tough solution to crack. Do you intend to, license that software? Or are you going to aggregate demand and bring it out across the rest of the fleet, or not just your fleet, but across the rest of the CJ4 fleet, for instance?
That's a good question. We haven't made any firm decisions on that. We're always open to conversations. But we're definitely pretty excited about the technology, and we think that it's very clear that empty legs have immense marketing value. Which I think you were kind of just referencing there, right? Everyone loves a deal.
Yeah.
And empty legs, they just, there's like this mental association between empty legs and a deal.
Yeah. It represents inefficiency in the market, right? And where there's inefficiency in the market, that's where you have opportunity, right? So if you can, fly at cost, or close there, cost plus some, right? I'd rather fly that on a on-demand charter than.
The wild thing though is that oftentimes we're selling our empty legs for close to wholesale charter pricing.
Really?
Yeah. So that's the thing. I think you were kind of just making the point right there, right? Like these empty leg deals that we hear about, where someone flew on, a G550 for cost minus 20%.
Yeah. They all love to get on TikTok and tell you about it too.
Yeah.
And it's like, that didn't actually happen.
The truth is that that's like lightning, getting struck by lightning. It happens, but it's pretty rare, and truthfully, if the market is efficient, it will never happen, actually, or almost never happen.
You'll only be able to fly repositioning flights. So like Naples to Tampa.
Yeah.
Or Naples to Orlando, which is like, okay, cool. But.
Right. So we think that, so here's the thing, and this was a really important underlying thesis, or underlying, I guess, this was the hypothesis that led to the business plan very early on. I believe that market is becoming more efficient very, very rapidly. And it's the result of digital platforms like Avinode, but many others as well. And it's just, technology. It's just, in so many ways, the market is becoming more digitized. And as that continues to proceed forward in any number of different ways, the market will become more efficient. And those empty legs, the clearing price for them, the market clearing price, is going to approach what a normal charter price would be, with some kind of a discount built in for the lack of time flexibility. Yeah. But to us, if you believe that, it's really easy to understand why our business model will be extremely efficient for the foreseeable future and will become more efficient as that market becomes more efficient. So the floating fleet model that was the only answer for providing national service in a fairly efficient way, we think is sort of becoming an outmoded operating model for the corner of the market that we're in.
So is the idea, I mean, so you just announced Naples, right? So now you have Milwaukee, Naples. Is the idea to say we have these hubs in strategic locations across the country? Maybe the next one's Scottsdale, or Scottsdale's a little is under rough shape after SetJet. Rest in peace. Scottsdale, somewhere in California, is the idea to make these hubs and then fly efficiently between them, or like, 'cause you guys announced the Naples move. I would imagine that's probably not the end. I mean, neither of you strike me as guys who are like ready to retire, or like, oh yeah, we're gonna go from Milwaukee to Naples and we're gonna enjoy our beach house down in Naples and then probably call it a day. This is good scale for us.
Yeah, Matt, when is the last time that you had 30 minutes in a day where you didn't think about jet outs?
Yeah,
In some way.
it's been a while, and I guess
Even
I'll
back
tip
when he
you
was
off that I'm
back-
not really a Florida beach house guy. Anyways, I'd rather be in the mountains or someplace.
So Colorado might be next on the list. Hey, there is apparently a facility that might be for sale here shortly after Wheels Up decided that Colorado Springs was not the move. So I want to talk about two things. First direction that I want to go is you place an order for 4 CJ4 Gen 2s, and you have spoken at length about why buy new in your model, because basically no worries, right? It's warranty, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think we need to dive into that. I think operators out there understand why you'd go new versus used, right? So we'll skip that part. But let's go to, you've placed an order for 4. Do you have customer demand for the 4, or are you saying we're going to sell the capacity as it comes to market? Like, how do you guys think about pipeline, and how much is too much demand, right? To where there's a switching cost, or they're going to go somewhere else. Like, how do you guys think about that from a capacity planning for future customers?
Well, I guess I can maybe address part of it here. I guess the first thing to acknowledge is that this is an extremely capital-intensive business, right?
Very.
And
you've probably got $1 million tied up at Textron per airplane now. I mean, I'm not gonna.
I can't confirm or deny the exact number.
Well, okay. If
I can tell
anybody,
you it's a very large number.
Anybody who's bought new airplanes understands that the pre-delivery payment portion is just incredibly painful, because you're just out.
Yeah.
So,
and that's risk, right?
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. We acknowledge it. We have done a lot of analysis of data, historical valuation data to, assess our downside risk. If there's a market correction, what happens, to our ability to sell that inventory. And we had to be very confident about our position, in adverse scenarios before we were willing to, make commitments to a fleet agreement. But, look, I mean, if you want to be in this business and you want to be in this business in a national sort of way, we believe this is a new airplane business. And I know there's been a lot of coverage lately about, is there coming resurgence in pre-owned fractional? I think there's a place for that. But that comes with problems too. It comes with some of the problems that you just referenced. There are contingent liabilities, in fleet agreements. What happens if the market moves against you between the time that you put those deposits at risk and when you take delivery of the airplanes? There's also huge contingent liabilities in buying older pre-owned airplanes that could have huge maintenance events arise, that could have a terrible AD or regulation that arises that induces a huge capital cost. on the operator or on the owners, that's a huge risk. We think it's much harder to hedge that risk than to hedge the risk of not being able to sell some inventory. And really, truthfully,
or worst case scenario, turn around and flip it at
well, we would,
probably what you got in it.
that would never be our
If you
plan.
had, I'm saying if you had, I'm saying market turns against you, all of a sudden Milwaukee, everybody leaves because like it floods or something, right? And
Sure.
like you couldn't sell a fraction of an airplane
In
to
Milwaukee.
save your life.
Well,
in Milwaukee or anywhere, you could,
Sure.
turn around and sell at some sort of a discount.
Right. And of course we would never set out to do that. But, we would always want to sell, in a fractionalized setting. Of course, if a bank is underwriting our business, I'm sure that, they're going to take that into consideration.
Banks have to write like catastrophic downside risk.
Yeah.
While not likely, not impossible, right? We could have a major recession.
Right. So, we think that that's, that based on data from 2008, 2009, 2010, that, that risk can be hedged pretty well with capital, and that's kind of to bring it full circle. We think that, if you want to be in this business, you want to be serious, you have to have real capital behind you. And that's something that we've been very fortunate on. We have, a great group of investors. I've had the ability to bring some strength from past business successes into this business. And, we've been able to build this business without debt, without the type of debt that, you've seen at some of the other fractional operators, that have been talked about. So that's really important. That's the difference between surviving a recession or not, we think, So at least that's how we look at it.
Hey, no,
If I had a crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be bothering with the hard work of building this business.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I think too, being in commercial real estate, you have a unique view of the market. You can see what happens when you lever up into infinity, and we have a little bit of a hiccup, and all of a sudden 5 years later you're getting a call, and oh, by the way, to refi is going to be double the interest rate of what you had. It's a little bit different than, oh, okay, well, we held on to this fraction for another 6 weeks than what we thought we would have, right?
Right.
I will definitely say that the finance background, the experience that I gained in that area from the real estate business has been immensely useful in this business. Really aircraft fractional aircraft co-ownership, which is our business, of course. It's a finance business. At the end of the day, it's about raising capital, having enough capital on your balance sheet, assessing your downside risk, managing your investment in a prudent way. Yeah, absolutely. It's that's like almost the most important part of the business.
Yeah, exactly. Making sure that you have staying power. It's also a service to your customers to stay in business. I mean, you've got to make you have to make enough money to continue as an ongoing concern, or else that's bad. That's the ultimate bad customer service.
Absolutely.
Matt, I got a question for you. Kind of as we try and take this thing in for a landing. What's the most controversial opinion that you have in business aviation?
Oh, you're getting the hard questions here. That's fine. I'll let Matt take that one.
Controversial.
You're not out of the hot water yet.
We do get pushback on how's the base model going to work? How are you going to be able to support your customers? There's no way that scheduling will work out. One of the things that we made a conscious decision, when I joined Jet Out, Joe had already spent 3 years developing the operations side before we developed the customer side and the marketing side. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, something that probably can be lightly brushed over and not realized. But in our industry, a lot of businesses are built on a great marketing idea and a tagline and a blurb that's put on a website. And, one of those things that customers quickly will, you could promise customers that you'll have guaranteed access. any day you call, we'll get you an airplane. And that's really hard when you're going to try to sell a floating fleet model or even a base model across the whole country, and you've got customers in all these different states, and you're guaranteeing them access to an airplane, and they all might want to fly the same day.
Like Super Bowl weekend, Masters weekend, the ones
Thanksgiving,
the ones that we read about, right?
Right. So Jet Out, they had figured out the operations side prior to this, and they had looked at it and said, well, I think we should not guarantee access, but we should financially incentivize customers to get the airplanes back to base so that we can serve more customers in a day. Also, we developed in the last couple of years a way for customers to share their days. So as Joe talked, everybody gets 20 days per 1/16th, but the empty legs, a lot of our customers tend to be going in the same direction or have houses in the same general area of the country. And the base model works really well because we sell these co-ownership shares to people that all live within a region, a same general region. So like the Milwaukee, where we house the airplanes for the upper Midwest region, that kind of covers basically the southern edge of Chicago to Green Bay and over to Madison and kind of a little bit of Michigan. Those customers all tend to be traveling in the same general direction.
Florida.
They're going to Florida. They're going to the Bahamas. A few might go to Scottsdale.
The same islands in the
Yeah.
Bahamas.
Really?
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's been way more than we ever expected.
Yeah.
We have found that our clients that are from the same community tend to go to exactly the same places.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're, the neighbor goes to this neighborhood in some place, in Florida or in the Bahamas, and then they tell all their friends about it, and they see, they're all going to the same place. So what we've done is we've said, okay, well, if you can share your travel day with another co-owner, we'll deduct you a half day. So we'll have one co-owner go down to Florida, and they might get dropped off on the west coast of Florida. We'll relocate the airplane over to the east coast. There's your opportunity for that great deal on an empty leg if you want one between Naples and Boca. And then we'll fly another.
Not a whole lot of budget customers come between Naples and Boca, so
yeah. But then we'll fly another co-owner back. They'll each end up using a half day. They'll each pick up their portion of the operating cost, and we serve two customers the same day with one airplane and one flight crew. And so that solved a lot of the problems on the scheduling. And even when it comes to like the busy time, customers tend to book their family trips, their spring break trips all the way out up to a year in advance. And that has helped the schedule just kind of seamlessly work. Like our scheduling, when we have a scheduling conflict where we're at capacity, we have a policy that has to be raised all the way up to our senior management. And Joe and I are both getting an email when that happens. And I can tell you that's only happened one time in 2024. And so that's probably the biggest objection to our business that I hear is, how are you going to make this schedule work? How are you going to pick up a customer in this state and fly over to this state and then drop up another customer? And like, when you think the floating fleet model, that is a logistics nightmare, but it's not when you're a base
when
model.
everybody's incentive to send it home.
Yeah.
So we're all going to be incentivized to fly as much as we can in that one day.
Yeah.
And it is, it's interesting, the controversial thing is, I guess if you look at like what Matt and I talked about today, it's all operations, right? Everything we talk about is operations. Very little time is spent in our office on shiny marketing plans and that sort of thing.
As a guy who works for a marketing company, I would love for you guys to have some big shiny marketing plans.
Well, someday that'll come.
Just
look, I'm
kidding.
We're working on that. We just believe. We believe in the value of that, and it's absolutely needed to build a national business, but it has to be, we think, done in order. You have to get the operation straight first, and then the marketing can come second. And I think, that's the controversial thing. We tell people that, and they, in the industry people, and they think we're crazy. Like, that's insane. What do you mean? You don't have, your whole marketing plan polished and figured out, and you didn't have that 3 years ago.
Oh, you don't have your tent reserved at the Masters?
Yeah, exactly. You don't have your tent reserved at the Masters. Absolutely. And we've done none of that. you know, we built a business model and an operation that we think is extremely compelling to our clients in the markets that we operate in, and the product sells itself. We almost, I mean, man, what would you say our
word of mouth, I'd assume.
word of mouth
Yeah.
is what would you say, like 90% of
Yeah,
the business?
yeah, 75 at least or 80%. Yeah, it's all word of mouth, and by doing that, we've taken a lot of the risk out of the business for us. And that's what it's all about is we want to have a longevity in the company. We don't want to be like some of the other industry operators that have great flash, but eventually you end up with a mess
Flash
to
in the
unravel.
pan. Flash in the pan.
Yeah,
You
where
teed yourself up for the flash in the pan joke.
yeah, so we want to, we want to build this long-standing longevity in the company. There's no financial risk in all of the operations side.
Awesome. Well, Matt, Joe, I appreciate you guys coming on Flight Path. If anybody wants to find out more about you guys or connect with you guys, LinkedIn guys, I'm a big Twitter guy. Personally, I don't really do LinkedIn nearly as much, but where can guys go to, people go to connect with you guys?
Well, this has been a lot of fun. It's been great talking with you today, Preston. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
This has been awesome.
You're a LinkedIn. I'm LinkedIn as well. I think that's, and then through our company socials as well. So.
Yeah.
Jetout.com.
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 Jetout.com is a great domain.
Yeah.
So awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.